Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. I am Matt Welch, being joined by Bryan Murphy and Devin Hasson. Gentlemen, for the second straight Thursday, we are coming to y'all from Kelly's Craft Tavern here in Frisco. Somehow they didn't kick us out after last week, and that's a good thing, because otherwise then we would have we wouldn't have had the opportunity to potentially partake in whether it's the craft beers at their full service bar, the made from scratch food. That is Kelly's out here at Preston Ridge on the west side of Preston, just north of 121. Big thanks to them for having us out for another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. And we are here to talk some basketball, because we are right immersed in the home stretch. In boys basketball, we have just 2 games left. We're recording this on Thursday. The girls are prepping for the playoffs and whatnot next week, so we're going to touch on a little bit of both. We're going to start, though, on the boys' side of things, talk some of the home stretch storylines and just what is at stake, because right now we are fully immersed in district title races, playoff races, and what have you. So, Bryan, over in your end, man, what's going on? Whether it's in Frisco, Little Elm, what is at stake these last couple nights of the season?
Everything is at stake with a couple games left, 2 games left actually in 9-5A in the Frisco district. Right when I thought Independence was going to pull away, and I predicted it, what was it, last week on the pod? I said, I think Independence has the best shot. Well, at the time they did, and now that's changed because Wakeland, they've picked up some big wins. They beat Liberty last Friday. They beat them pretty good in a defensive battle, and then they beat Memorial, another team that's making a playoff push. They're tied with Frisco for the 4th and final playoff spot at 10-6, but Wakeland beat them on a buzzer beater.
Wow.
The game was 77-77. Wakeland got the ball back with 8-9 seconds left. They bring it down. Their sophomore point guard, Michael Neiman, brings it up trying to make a play. He kicks it out to the corner, hits the 3 literally as time expires. I saw the video of it on Twitter, and everyone's going nuts. And it was at Memorial. Wow. So on the road, hostile environment over there at second year Frisco Memorial. So now Wakeland, they're sitting there at 12-4, all alone in first place. And then you have Independence and Centennial. They've been the constants. It's been the Wakeland, Independence, Centennial trio, being those top 3 seeds, but no one has really been able to separate more than one game, and no team has. Because if you look, like I said, Centennial is 11-5, tied with Independence. Then you look, you have Memorial and Frisco, 10-6, and Liberty's still somehow in the mix, somewhere in the mix after that 0-5 start, and they won 7 in a row to all of a sudden just surge back into the mix. They're 9-7. Technically, they could still make the playoffs. They need some help from Frisco and Memorial, and just certain tiebreakers. If whatever happens with Centennial and Independence, they're not safe completely either. So there's a lot to be played for. Tuesday and Friday next week. What
does your gut tell you as far as how this is all going to shake out?
You're putting me on the spot.
That's what I do.
I think, as is right now, well, it's not hard to say because Memorial and Frisco are tied, but I think it's going to be Wakeland, Independence, Centennial, and Memorial.
Okay.
I think those are the 4 playoff teams. Don't ask me to seed them. I have no clue, but I think it'll be those 4.
Over in District 9-6A, we've got a couple nice races that are still developing. There's no question at the top of the district. Allen wrapped up its first outright district title since 1992 on Tuesday with a win over Plano West. The Eagles are 12-0. They're well clear of the field, so Allen has got the 1 seed locked up. It's those other 3 seeds that are very much in play. You have Prosper and McKinney, which are tied for second place at 9-3, and we'll find out on Friday who's going to get that 2 seed, because that is sure enough when those 2 teams will rematch. Currently, McKinney has the edge due to getting that first head-to-head win. Plano West, though, did Prosper a huge favor, upsetting McKinney in the second half of district to give the Eagles a fighting chance heading into that rematch. And then the one that I'm fascinated to see what shakes out is the race for the 4 seed, because Plano they've been right there. They've been on the doorstep for the past, 2 weeks it feels like. They built what felt like a pretty comfortable lead. They've shaken Jesuit. They've shaken Boyd. And then there's Plano East that's still just...
they won't go away.
They won't go away, no. Plano East still has a fighting chance for this. So with Plano, they're 6-6 right now, looking to clinch their first playoff berth since 2014. They just need a win. So, the stakes are relatively, straightforward for them. 2 games back is Plano East. Plano East kept its hopes alive on Tuesday with a big 15-point win at Jesuit. Jesuit was a little shorthanded. They were missing their big man, Darryl Brown, and the Panthers capitalized accordingly. Evan Williams, Plano East muscle in the middle. He had a pretty big game for them, had a double-double and whatnot, and they just destroyed them on the boards, like 41-19, and just a massive advantage, points in the paint. You could really sense the absence of Brown there in the Jesuit lineup, but fair play to East, though, for taking advantage, and they're 2 games back. Plano had a shot against Prosper, and if you saw the video on Twitter, Bryan, but a game-winning layup by Grant Shaw denied the Wildcats at the very end. So as far as what these two teams have left, though, in front of them, Plano has games Friday against Allen. That's probably not going to go terribly well. But then Tuesday against Plano West, last place Plano West. And then with East, they have games remaining against McKinney-Boyd. If you'll remember, the first meeting between Plano East and Boyd went right down to the wire. It was decided on a half-court buzzer beater by Colin O'Brien. So again, not a whole lot separating those two the first time they locked up. We'll see how much has changed in the rematch on Friday. And then East turns around and plays Prosper in its regular season finale. So there is a scenario where we could get to Tuesday and there's just one game separating these two, and they split the regular season series head-to-head, so you could be looking at a potential play-in game if Plano loses out and East wins out. And then you have District 6A, which has been one of the most contentious playoff races in the entire area. I would say there were 5 teams that were within like one game of each other at the midpoint of the season. It's been a pretty rough and tumble district over there in Lewisville ISD and Coppell, and right now as far as where things stand, Coppell is in first place. They're 10-2. But they have not locked anything up yet. They're only one game clear of Irving MacArthur and Lewisville. Those two are tied for second place at 9-3. Then you have Flower Mound, which is in fourth place at 8-4, and Marcus still on the hunt at 7-5. So what this all means, the biggest takeaways from this is Lewisville, which at the midpoint of the season you weren't really sure what you had with Lewisville. They started off with 4 wins and then they lost their last 3, and they were actually on the outside of the playoff picture at the midpoint, despite having a presumptive district MVP candidate in Keontae George. Just to see the Farmers and how they have been able to, kind of reverse course and to the point where they have not lost a game in the second half of district. They were able to, again, they swept Coppell. They're the only team in the district that's been able to beat Coppell, and they did it twice. They were able to avenge a prior loss against Marcus. In addition to Keontae George, they got a big game from Kylan Green in that one with 19 points. And then they've got games with Flower Mound and MacArthur left. So there is still a path to the district title for Lewisville, despite all that they've been through this season. It is still because they have that head-to-head over Coppell. Coppell just needs a win, period, just to clinch at least a share of the district title. In Flower Mound's case, they need to win Friday versus Lewisville or Tuesday versus Irving to clinch a playoff spot. If they don't get it Friday, I'd say they're probably getting it Tuesday. Irving has not won a game yet in district. Let's see, Devin. How about over in whether it's Garland ISD or Mesquite ISD? What is happening over in your neck of the woods?
Where would you want to start? We'll go 10-6A. This has been Wiley ran away with this thing a long time ago, which was a surprise to me. But they've done it day in, day out. They're 12-0. It's
Devin,
basically
when was the last time South Garland didn't win the district?
3 years, basically.
So basically,
you have
the
2 years. Tyrese Maxey, Chris Harris, where they rolled undefeated.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. But essentially, after Wiley, it's been a 5-team race for those other 3 playoff spots, and they've traded. They've knocked each other off. North Garland finally got eliminated on Tuesday. Lakeview clinched, so now you have basically 3 teams battling for 2 spots. You have Lakeview at 8-4, Saxe at 7-5, and South Garland and Garland both at 6-6. Saxe is still in good position, even though they play Wiley on Friday. They close with Naaman Forest, who's the last place team in the district. So they're still really, but stranger things have happened, especially the way these things have gone, and you don't want to take anything for granted. South Garland and Garland play on Friday. I think that's basically de facto playing games, since they both have really tough challenges the following week. Worst case scenario for Saxe is they lose out, and both those teams win their finale, and there's some kind of tiebreak situation. But Saxe's in really good shape to get back to the playoffs for the second year in a row. 11-6A has been a 5-team race at the top. since day one. It still is. You have Rockwall and Horn that are tied at 8-2, Longview at 8-3, Rockwall Heath at 6-4, Mesquite at 5-5. Those first three, Rockwall, Horn, and Longview, have all clinched, and they all play each other these last weeks. Which they're going to settle on the court. I mean, Rockwall in particular, they play Longview and Horn for their final two games. Horn plays Mesquite and Rockwall, and then Longview just has the Rockwall on a bye. Mesquite's kind of the interesting story about this because, 4 games in, they're alone in first place. And they've just kind of had some struggles. And now they are really a long shot to make the playoffs because they trail Rockwall Heath by just 1 game. But Rockwall Heath closes with Tyler Lee, who's winless. And then they have the head-to-head with Mesquite. While as Mesquite has Horn on Friday, and then they have the head-to-head meeting. Well, that head-to-head meeting on Tuesday may not mean anything if Heath beats Lee and Mesquite loses to Horn.
Okay.
So they went from being the district front runner to being the odd man out. We'll see if they can turn things around. Again, they're capable of beating Horn, but then not only would they have to beat Rockwall Heath in that finale, that would just force a tie, so they would have a play-in game later that week. Just real quickly on 13-5A, or in boys basketball, we call it the Lancaster District. They've as expected, they've run away with it. Poteet is solidly in second right now. They're 8-3. Kaufman is 6-4. It's going to come down to with the second seed. Those teams play in the season finale, and it's likely the second seed will be in the line. West Mesquite was in really good position. They could have clinched on Tuesday, and then they got upset. They had a fourth quarter lead, and North Forney was able to rally, come back and beat West Mesquite. So they pulled within a game of West Mesquite. And so you kind of, West Mesquite's still in good shape. They play Forney on Friday, and they're in with that win. But if they lose, North Forney has a very good chance to pull into a tie because they close with Terrell, who is also winless. So West Mesquite, like I say, Poteet in, West Mesquite with a good chance to be in, but they still have a little work to do because they should have probably beat North Forney on Tuesday. So nothing's assured on Friday.
Bryan, let's close this first half out with a look at District 8-5A right now and where things are at for the Colony and Little Elm, both of whom have thrust themselves right into the playoff mix. And sure enough, right now they're tied for second place.
And they play tomorrow night.
It's so fitting.
At the Colony.
That rivalry just gets even better by the years. Even without R.J. Hampton, without all the stars from the Colony last year, it still has plenty of luster. And the winner of that game tomorrow night could potentially be looking at the 2 seed. 1 seed is out of the question.
Yep.
Denton Braswell has locked that thing up. Speaking of which, man, you should talk about just the momentum that a program could be building as they prepare to make the jump to 6A. What a start to just the 2019-20 school year for Braswell.
And on the football field, on the basketball court, in girls and boys, they're kind of like I see them transitioning kind of like a Prosper.
For sure.
I see them jumping right into 6A. Maybe not make the playoffs in every sport in their first year like Prosper did, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're, contending in football. Obviously contending in basketball next year. I'm talking about with the Geyer and Allen, that new district popping up. Braswell, they're on the right path. And this is their 3rd year, 4th year?
It feels like it, yeah.
That's kind of an underrated talent base over there.
For sure.
Mean, Geyer, people don't realize how good that Geyer and Ryan have been in multiple sports, and then you throw Braswell and their instant success in there. I mean, I'm
curious as to where Braswell pulls their kids from, because they're in Little Elm zone or something like that. They take some Little Elm, but they're Denton Braswell, they're Denton ISD, but it's in the city of Little Elm. I've never understood that. And it's right there off 380, and it pulls kids from almost like West Prosper. I don't know. It's a unique. One of my friends is a coach in the 7th or 8th grade of one of the feeder schools, and they just have so much talent up there, and so it's no coincidence that that Braswell is so good.
They were able to gut out a tough one against the Colony on Tuesday, 40-39. A grinder was the final score. That snapped a 5-game winning streak by the Cougars, and the Colony and Little Elm have been 2 of the hottest teams in this district. They have just vaulted up into contention for that number 2 seed. The Colony, as I just said, had a 5-game winning streak. That was another team that was really, really up and down throughout the first half of district. Tough to really figure out what they had, but then they've really, really thrived in close quarters. Of those 5 wins, 3 of them were decided by 5 points or less. Guys like Keith Miller, Tay Mosher, and then Caden Sclafani. They've been stepping up when need be, and they've put themselves in position. They do have the head-to-head currently over Little Elm. Little Elm could obviously return the favor tomorrow night. But what have you seen out of the Lobos now as they have thrust themselves into the mix with 4 consecutive wins?
And they're red hot.
Yeah.
A big win. Tuesday against Justin Northwest. They needed late free throws from Michael Prather to win that game by 1. So it was their second victory over Northwest. If you look at it this way, if they lose that game Tuesday, Little Elm's 5-5. Northwest is 5-5.
Wow.
And anything can happen from that point because then, there's no – Little Elm now has that head-to-head over them and a 2-game lead. But if they lose that game, they're just tied dead even. And then you also have to worry about Denton Ryan, who they've now fallen to 6-5, but I think I believe they close up the year against Denton, and Denton's 2-8. That should be a win for Ryan. Remember Denton Ryan? We were talking like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It was them and Braswell at the top.
Exactly. And then they've lost, I believe, 4 or 5 in a row. I think it's 4 in a row that they've lost, and they've kind of come back to earth, which has been really big for a team like Little Elm. 2 weeks ago it looked like, hey, it could have been Braswell, Ryan, Northwest, and the Colony. With the Colony getting hot there in the mid part of district, and it looked like maybe Little Elm was going to get left out, but this 4-win streak has come at the right time, and that win against Northwest was the biggest of the year.
And that's got to be just such a reassuring note for the program when you consider, R.J. Hampton, goes overseas over the summer, and you're just wondering, okay.
He's back, by the way.
What is? I know.
Yeah, he's back home. Yeah. He's at Little Elm, yeah.
He's training for the draft. And you wonder then just, okay, what does this program have? The new head coach, just a complete change of the guard in Little Elm. And so in the first year of the post-R.J. Hampton at Little Elm, and they're still able to somehow carve out a playoff berth, despite having to gut it out, too, because it was hardly one that was just, they paved their way to.
I'm not going to lie. When I saw them it was the second game of the season against Liberty, non-district. It was mid-November, and I was like, Frisco school? I get to check them out. Liberty, they're district champs from last year. And Little Elm, let's see what they're about. Losing, the district MVPs respectively. And just seeing Little Elm that night, man, I recognized one player. It was Keith Smith, and he was the lone returning starter from Little Elm. And I didn't recognize. I recognized a couple of the kids from JV and from guys that Christian Mirage, guys that played barely, very small minutes last year. And there was maybe almost a dozen guys I did not know that were not on the team last year that moved or from JV or something. And I was like, man, I don't know what Little Elm is going to be this year. And to see them, in the driver's seat, they haven't clinched anything yet, but to be in the driver's seat, to finish, possibly second if they beat the Colony, that's huge right there.
Obviously, whereas the boys still have a couple nights left in their regular season, the girls have wrapped up their regular season and are now prepping for the playoffs. We're going to get to kind of a mini playoff preview on the girls' side of things in just a moment. But first, got a special guest swinging by as Plano East head girls basketball coach Jessica Linson stops by the podcast to chat about the Lady Panthers season and their upcoming playoff match. We're being joined by Jessica Linson, head coach of the Plano East girls basketball team. Coach, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to swing by Kelly's Craft Tavern and stop down on the high school sports podcast by Star Local Media.
Thank you for having me.
So, you're getting ready for the playoffs.
Yes.
Fresh off a second place in district after what a grind that had to be to get to this point with the team that you have. Just talk about how rewarding it is to have a second place finish now and to be able to now look ahead to the playoffs.
Yes, it is. Because of course we were 3-3, I think, at the half. So it was kind of a panic with them being so young, and you just didn't know where they could go. It could go really good, or it could be really bad. Especially the type of games we lost. Allen by 1, Plano by 8, McKinney by 5. But we had spotted McKinney 12. So it was just like, what are we gonna do? But I told them, even in my past coaching profession, I was like, I always do better in the second round. Like, y'all just trust me. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I just had that mentality, and they really sold out in the second half of district. They were just very committed to me, the vision, and what we were trying to do. I regret that Plano game. I was honest about 3. I think we could have ran the table, but just to see their growth as being young kids and they're learning how to win. Because I feel like that was a struggle for us.
Coach, I'd like to take some credit for the for the successes of the second half, because I met you after the Prosper game, and y'all beat Prosper, and that was a big win. It kind of eliminated Prosper essentially, and then y'all went on, to beat Allen. You kept telling me after the game. Do you remember that?
Yes, I was
you were like, you got to beat, and I was like, I won't be able to, but good luck.
Right.
Even during that 3-3 start, was there a turning point, maybe even in a loss, where you kind of thought things were starting to come together?
In all 3 of those losses, really, because in Allen, Matt was there. We're in control. Like, it wasn't like the game, any of those games, it was never out of control. So we were always in control at Allen. you lose to some older kids, so you leave that game feeling like, okay, that's not bad. Same thing in Plano. We're up. It just kind of gets away from us. McKinney, we spotted them 12 points. It was 12-0 in the first quarter.
Wow.
And then we come back. We were actually up, and they just kind of lost it at the end. So it was never really a point of we're dead. Like, that wasn't the point. Like, all wins were, okay, this is what we need to do. And the real turning point was I looked at some stats. When we out-rebounded teams, shot 60% from the free throw line, and had less than 20 turnovers, we won games.
Okay.
So the secret for us was that was a stat. And they got those 3 goals every game. And it was constant reminders in the games.
Now, this is your first year at Plano
Yes,
East, and you have a very unique roster. It's a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores, lots of young kids that are getting some pretty heavy minutes at a young age. When you got to East, think back to, I guess, your first couple weeks on campus, and just what was it like having to kind of mold this team and getting them to accept a new sense of leadership at such a young age?
A challenge.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you that it was easy, because it wasn't. I think they were still trying to find their identity, too. Because you had Denavia Hall, who was still a returner. Ada was still a returner, number 25. Tiana Amos was a returner. So you had kind of a good mix of young, but it was getting them the culture right. Like, even when I think I talked to you about when I was interested in East, I didn't necessarily like the job because I felt like they always underachieved. I wasn't, like, looking for it. And when I got there, I had to figure out, okay, why are they underachieving? You have all this talent, this young talent. So the first challenge was just changing the culture, just getting them to understand, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what you're walking into. This is what I need you to do. And it was a journey. I mean, we've grown together. Like I tell them constantly, everybody can judge us, but we haven't even been together for a year. It's maybe 6 months that we've known each other. So we've made leaps and bounds, and we're still growing.
How different is it then versus coaching a team that has a bit more senior leadership on it and whatnot?
Oh, it's very different. Because they're sensitive. You have moments where they're sensitive. You have mental breakdowns. You have most of them play at a high level too in the summer. So you're dealing with discerning the difference of AAU ball, coach ball, and then just understanding the adversity part of it, like what we were talking about. When they're 3-3, understanding, hey, we're okay. Like, y'all are okay, not this complete panic that young kids go into.
Have you ever, just had a second just kind of think then, just like obviously you got to get through this season, but just the long-term potential of what this group could become in the years, in the years ahead?
I think that can be special.
Yeah.
I think that could be one of the best groups that have ever came out of Plano. I do. It's some additions, like Denavia Hall has a sister.
Yeah.
That goes to Murphy that could play. A big eye, 42, has a sister.
Yeah.
2 as well, that's in 7th grade. So you look long term, you're thinking, dang, like, I could have a senior group that has been with me for 3 years, and on top of some young talent. I think the next 2 years, they're probably like top 5 teams in state to me, like potentially, if they want to get there.
Now, talk a bit about how tough this district is. Obviously, you weren't here last year
Right.
when there was literally 3 McDonald's All-Americans in the same district. They're gone, but it's still brutal. Prosper's still good, and they didn't even make the playoffs. And obviously, Allen and Plano, they lose their best player, and they're still, state-ranked and amazing. How brutal is this 6A district?
It's brutal. I don't think it's necessarily the District of Doom because you're dealing with 2 different types of basketball with the Duckyville and SGP.
Yeah.
I think it's the second probably most brutal because there's no day off. It's evident West beats Allen.
Yeah.
Like, it can Boyd beats Allen. It can literally happen at any moment. If you're not giving 100%, you could lose. And that's hard to get your kids prepared because even in that stretch where we went 3 losses, they don't have time to think about it. So you literally have to bounce back every game. That's difficult.
You're able to survive that phase of the season, though, and now you're on to the playoffs. Now, there was a chance that you would have had a potential seeding game on Friday against Allen. Of course, that's not going to materialize. Did you want that for the girls, though, to get another crack at Allen or whatnot?
I did because we had a long break.
Yeah.
So we hadn't played for like almost a week and a half. So I was actually looking forward to that game. And I felt like it would have been tight. Like, me and you talked, we would like a game of 7 of us versus Allen. it would have helped us either way. Either way. So I was looking forward to that game. I think Teresa was too.
Well, and you mentioned that this whole season's been kind of a growth process, a learning process. The playoffs is a different step up, the intensity level. What do you tell your teams, especially your younger girls, going forward into Tuesday or into next week?
We've been talking to them about you're entering your third season. So you went through pre-district where, we played the Duncanville, the SGPs, the DeSotos. We survived. You survived when you came through in the next part of the season. And now you're entering into where you have to win 7 games. So your mentality everything has to be a level of perfection. From practice to drills to film to your scouting report. You have to amp yourself up to another level. And that is a struggle with them being so young. Getting them to go to another level and a change in coaching too, so they've never had to do this much film, or I'm expecting a lot of them. So you challenge them, but you comfort them too, to let them know they can make it.
Last thing before we let you go, Coach. Thoughts on your opponent in the first round and what Wiley's got in store?
Yeah, Wiley Coach Zunga does a great job over there. They're solid, they're fundamental. He's gonna try to slow us down, probably. I'm looking for it to be a good game. He does a good job over there.
Awesome, Coach. Hey, well, best of luck to y'all next week. That'll do it. This is Jessica Linson, the Plano East head girls basketball coach. Coach, appreciate you swinging by the podcast, and best of luck to y'all in the playoffs.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We are here with Justin Bramblett, General Manager of Kelly's Craft Tavern here in Frisco. First off, Justin, thank you for having us back out for another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. So, just a quick word on just talk about this establishment that you got here.
Absolutely. We are an American craft tavern. Now, I don't want the word tavern to scare people off. We do have a great list of craft beers, big back bar focused on whiskeys and scotches and bourbons, full wine list, full craft cocktail list. But beyond that, we have a great scratch kitchen with a tenured staff back there. We do a variety of food options. Saturday and Sunday we have breakfast and brunch. It's fantastic. We have a lunch menu. We have hamburgers, salads, sandwiches, big menu. So guests will see the American Craft Tavern. That's the first thing they see with the big bar. But we are a full service restaurant as well. All the above. So anything you guys want,
awesome.
We'll be here.
Is there a signature item on the menu that folks should be on the lookout for?
We have quite a few signatures. We smoke all of our meats in-house. Smoked sausage, ribs, brisket, of course. Once again, everything's made from scratch. There's not anything that's frozen out of a box, but anything that's smoked in our back there in the kitchen and smoke is what I would focus on. Absolutely.
Awesome. That sounds delicious, man. Well, hey, Justin, I appreciate you for swinging by, and thanks again for letting us host this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast.
Thanks for being here.
Big thanks to Jessica Linson for swinging by to chat on the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. And also a big thanks to Kelly's Craft Tavern here in Frisco for having us out for the second straight week to record this episode of the podcast as we sit here trying to stave off the smell of the ribs or the half dozen burgers that they have here or something from the made-from-scratch Tex-Mex menu. It all smells so delicious. That is Kelly's Craft Tavern here in Frisco, located at Preston Ridge on the west side of Preston Road, just north of 121. All right, gentlemen. So we've talked some home stretch stuff on the boys end of the hard courts. So let's shift gears, talk a little bit of girls. Now we're going to do our full-fledged girls basketball playoff preview on Monday, but we know most of the matchups right now. So just some cursory things that have jumped out at us as we prepare for the first round. Devin, we've got obviously with districts 9, 6A, and 10, 6A hooking up some cross-market flavor between your schools and mine. So to set the stage for what the 4 matchups are. Plano Senior, the district champion from 9-6A, they take on Rowlett in the first round. Plano East, who we just talked with Coach Linson about, they draw Wiley. McKinney, which got the 3rd seed in 9-6A, they draw 10-6A runner-up Lakeview Centennial. And the matchup that I want to quickly just touch on, a matchup that has plenty of backstory to it, but the 4 seed from 9-6A, Allen, they draw 10-6A champion Saxe. First off, how many consecutive district championships for Saxe?
This is 5. 5 in a row, 69. That number 69 district victory in a row was Tuesday against Rowlett. So,
I mean, last year Allen and Saxe was one of the more anticipated matchups that you could conceivably get in the Region 2 6A playoffs, and we got it in the third round. Two teams that were far too. It was a very overqualified third round matchup, if you will, and certainly a thrilling game that went right down to the wire. It was decided on a pretty bang sequence where Saxe takes the lead with 10 seconds left. Allen scrambles back down the court. They miss their initial go-ahead shot, and then the smallest player on the floor, Sydney Adams, all 5'1" of her, was able to get a putback at the buzzer, and Allen wins in walk-off fashion, and they were able to parlay that into a trip to the state semifinals. And fast forward to almost 1 year later, and these two teams are meeting under a very, very different set of circumstances. With Saxe, it's just kind of been business as usual, I gather.
Well, it has been, but they still remember that game because they were 2 years removed from a trip to the state tournament, and they were seconds away from moving on to the regional tournament, and they feel they could have been in Allen's place if they would have won that game. So this was unexpected. They weren't thinking that Allen was going to be that fourth seed coming out of 9-6A until a couple of upsets happened, late Tuesday. But this is, again, Saxe has been almost like a machine through district play. I mean, they come out and they're just methodical in their defense and just the way they take apart their opponents. And they've been looking, I mean, they expect to be here. And this is the time of year they've been waiting for, to have a chance to gain a little bit a measure of revenge against Allen is a nice little caveat. But their mission is going further, and obviously they're going to come out and treat Allen with respect. They know what Allen's capable of. But I think if you're Saxe, you're thinking this is the first step in what they hope is a very, very long journey.
Now, if you'll remember when we were doing our mid-district look at the girls' basketball scene, we were talking about Allen as a potential district champion after they had run the table for the first half of district play. We were thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. How are they the 4 seed? Basically, for everything good that happened to Allen in the first half of district, just picture the exact opposite, and that was the second half of their schedule. They started off 6-0 in district, and they went 1-5 on the back half of district.
And was there any notable injuries or anything crazy?
Not that I can. It's just basically been, as far as the on-court product goes, at least, I can only speak to that. Basically, it was just, there was one little fatal flaw in each game. They just had such a tough time stringing together just a consistent performance against Plano, which was, you got right out of the chute, Allen and Plano, first place versus second place. Plano just completely just turns the game upside down by basically stall-balling their way to a victory, and Allen just got completely freaked out by the tempo change. They did not handle it well. I saw him against Plano East in that game that Coach Linson was talking about, and Allen, for all of its size and length, they could not get rebounds to save their lives against, a lot of, Plano East backcourt was just having their way with them on the glass. And then you look at a game against McKinney-Boyd, which was the real kind of red flag, when McKinney-Boyd, which was winless in district up until that rematch with Allen, when Boyd got its first win at Allen's expense. And then you look at the box score and you see that only one player managed to score more than 5 points or something to that tune. It's just been a really, really just uneven performance for Allen over the second half of district. And that's the thing. They had a chance to potentially, draw a seeding game for Plano East, maybe get the 2 seed, and then Plano West, a team that was in second to last in the district, they proceed to beat them. So in Allen's home gym, at that matter. So it just hasn't. They just have not been able to get any positive momentum since the midpoint. And now, as you mentioned, Devin, they're getting a Saxe team that is, probably been, if there was one team that they would probably like to play in the playoffs, regardless of the round, regardless of the stature of both teams, it was that Allen team after what happened last year. And they're catching an Allen team that's really at the, kind of at not exactly the ideal point of the season, trying to figure out just what exactly they have right now. We'll see. That matchup is going to be all too fascinating when Allen and Saxe rematch next week in the bi-district round of the playoffs. Let's see, Bryan. Let's talk some action in Frisco. So as far as the matchups right now, is there any one that kind of jumps off the page between 9-5A and 10-5A?
Lone Star and McKinney North. It's kind of not fair that we're getting that in the first round, kind of like Allen and Saxe. Yeah. Kendrick's been talking up that duo for McKinney North.
Kendrick, come on.
Talking up McKinney, yeah.
Gotta believe something that he says, right? What
That's out of character for Kendrick.
Was it Amaria Fields and what?
Chelsea Wooten.
Chelsea Wooten, yeah, we've heard, they average, 50 million points per game, just the two of them combined. And
pretty impressive. 50 million.
Yeah, it's not hard, not easy thing to do, but they're going up.
They showing how you ever lose, averaging that many.
Well, they're gonna have their hands full with Lone Star. They play Monday night. At Allen and what should be actually at J.J. Pierce and what should be a really, really good game that's really more suited for a third round, maybe even a regional tournament round game. But the job that Todd Muncie has done with that program, his first year there, one of their best players being a sophomore in Kyla Deck, and here they are finishing 14-4. They have a lot of firepower with that team. They've gone through a gauntlet of the Frisco district. They're playoff ready. They're battle tested. And McKinney North, that's going to be a really, really good matchup.
Over in District 8-5A, you've got basically you have like Lake Dallas is got the 1 seed. I mean, first off, what an accomplishment for Lake Dallas.
Didn't they tie?
They did. Them and Braswell split, so they needed a little bit of help on Tuesday, and they got that in the form of the Colony, which was able to spring an upset on Braswell, and that created a tie for first place between Lake Dallas and Braswell. There was a little bit of concern that Lake Dallas might have let things slip through their fingers after Little Elm upset them in the second half of district, but Lake Dallas, and just in the first year under head coach Jordan Davis, they were able to capture a share of the district championship. They won the coin flip, and they're the 1 seed, but they don't know who they're going to play just yet, because in 7-5A there is a 4-way tie for 4th place that features Colleyville Heritage, Saginaw Chisholm Trail, Azle, and Brewer, and I believe as we're recording this podcast, those teams are playing the semifinals of a mini tournament.
Oh my gosh!
To determine who gets that last playoff spot. So you'll have those 4 teams playing each other.
I've never seen that before.
Oh yeah, it happened years ago in the Plano Allen district when they had Lewisville ISD in there. It was pretty wild. Just a little
tournament just to be the 4 seed.
Yeah,
just to play Lake Dallas.
Yep.
Just to most likely lose by 25.
I mean, we'll see. But nevertheless, though, it's fun theater at the end of the season.
Fun. That's fun for those 4 teams. They get their own little mini playoffs.
Oh yeah. So I mean, they'll play the semifinals today, then they'll play the finals on Friday, and then they'll get enough time to prep for that first round matchup against the Lady Falcons. And then meanwhile, you have the Colony, which is back in the playoffs. But man, like what a time to get that long-awaited signature win in district play. The Colony, who was kind of the presumptive favorite heading into the district. Obviously, the state was not ready for Braswell to make the leap that they did, and then Lake Dallas, with all its continuity, taking a huge leap this season. But the Colony has 2 of the absolute best players in the state, Jewel Spear, Tamia Jones, and it was what a night on Tuesday for those 2 in their final home game as high schoolers to get a chance to go off. They combined for 49 points. Spear had 25, Jones had 24, and they were able to score an upset over Denton Braswell. Which, I mean, when you look at just throughout the course of their district schedule, just how they had struggled in matchups against Braswell, they had 15-point leads that they let get away against Lake Dallas, and they finally were able to get over the hump, get that signature win. And for a team that is very accustomed to making deep playoff runs, you remember last year they were the team that probably gave Amarillo the toughest test of its postseason run to a state championship. The Colony is a little bit of a different pretense. They're going to be a 3 seed this time versus a 1 seed last year, so that means it's a bit of a different road. You're going to have to play better teams a bit earlier in the postseason. But I mean, when you've got 2 of the top scorers in the state, it's you got a puncher's chance against anybody. Let's see, and then I don't know, Devin, over on your end, as far as whether it's Mesquite or whether it's 5A or 6A, what's anything that jumps out there to you?
I'm interested to see how Horn bounces back. They had a winner-take-all game on Tuesday against Tyler Lee for the 11-6A championship. They were up by 11 at halftime. Mm-hmm. They were in control of that game, and they get outscored 26-6 in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. And Tyler Lee goes on to win by 14. And so that's their last on-court activity. So they're going to have to regroup mentally and physically against a very good midway team. That district, just kind of looking over their overall records and some of what they've been able to do. Harker Heights was district champion, but they've had Colleen Ellison has some impressive wins, and Midway had some impressive wins. So and it's a quick turnaround, relatively speaking, because they got a Monday game, 7:30 in Ennis. And the other 2 Mesquite ISD teams that made the playoffs, Poteet and West Mesquite, are going to be big underdogs. This isn't the Poteet team last year that rolled through district and was the 1 seed. They're a 3 seed, having to play a tough Midlothian team. And then West Mesquite, as the 4 seed, draws Red Oak, who's the number 3 team in the state. So they're going to be underdogs. Like I say, want to see what Horn can do. Quick mention of Sunnyvale, real quick.
Absolutely.
Who this week is the number 4 team in the Class 4A state poll. They're 34-2. You talk about the 4th seed earning their right to get drubbed by the district champion. Well, that 4th seed is Athens, and they play on next week. But this is a rematch of last year when number 1 Sunnyvale went up against the 4 seed Athens, and Athens won 57-56. So we mentioned the revenge factor with Saxe. Sunnyvale's not going to be overlooking Athens this year, but assuming they can get by Athens, and we'll talk more about this next week, I'm really curious to see what this Sunnyvale team can do because they've been so good all season long.
And then just to kind of close out the podcast, I wanted to quickly kind of pivot from the basketball court to the football field because we had some pretty big news come down the pipe yesterday just on the local coaching scene with one of the more revered and prestigious jobs that this state affords. It is open. So for those who have not heard, Plano ISD, in what has been a bit of a whirlwind of a few months, they have pulled the trigger on basically officially the language of the press release. So they have basically head coach Jaydon McCullough, Plano Senior High School. He has accepted a new position within the school district. So the longest tenured active football coach in Plano ISD, one of the longest tenured coaches in all of PISD right now. There's a bit of a changing of the guard, and it culminates just a wild few months. Building off of that football season with Plano ISD, where for the first time in 30 years, PISD doesn't have a team in the postseason, and you're just kind of wondering, okay, well that happens. So what is just going to be kind of the trickle down effect? Then you see in November with Gerald Brents, the longtime athletic director, he announces his retirement, and then last week they make the hire of a former Prosper ISD assistant athletic director Jeff Smith. He gets the job in Plano as their new AD, and then 8 days later they make a change with one of the most prestigious football programs in the state. With Coach McCullough, he's been coaching at Plano Senior since 1993 as an assistant. He was named the head coach in 2008. In his 12 years at the helm, a 70-59 record, 8 playoff appearances and whatnot. But it's I don't know, just as far as what this, because once this news broke, Twitter just blew up because this is Plano Senior. This is a program that is right up there with the most successful in the history of Texas high school football. So when there's a coaching move, that's going to generate a lot of buzz. It is wild because lost in all of just the conjecture about this. You kind of forget the human element that comes with these coaching jobs and just the discourse on social media and whatnot after a coach is hired or let go or whatnot. And in the case of Coach McCullough with Plano, it's a guy who literally he does eat, sleep, and breathe that program and has for a long time. He's a Plano Senior High School alum. He played for the football program. The guy bleeds maroon and white, and he is he knows. Right up there with the likes of John Clark and Tom Kimbrough, Gerald Brents, just what that program stands for, and he has so much respect for his predecessors. So when you have that kind of passion for something to basically fall short just as far as the results go, as far as meeting those expectations, it's got to just tear Coach McCullough apart inside when you factor in just how much that program means to him. But at the end of the day, the results are what they are, and whereas you look at throughout the course of his tenure, there was some consistency early on, but then over the last 5 years, you've seen the program really kind of level off. I mentioned his win-loss record. Well, over those last 5 years, it's just 25-26 with 1 playoff appearance. You had more consistency in the first half with postseason appearances in 6 of his first 7 years, but the program hasn't won a playoff game since 2009. And then you look at kind of the teams that were beating them in the playoffs, and there was years when they were losing to teams like Skyline and Denton Geyer and whatnot, state-ranked teams. Some of the juggernaut teams in the state. Whereas you could say at the end of the season, okay, we still had a solid year. We just ran up against a really good Geyer team or a really good Skyline team, and that's kind of where we're at now because this is Plano ISD saying, okay, we want to get on the other side of that statement where a team ends the season saying, you know what, we've had a great season, but we just ran into a really good Plano team, which it feels like it's been a while since a team's really been able to say that.
Well, especially the older school Plano fan base, the expectations are just unrealistic. This isn't 40 years ago.
So much has changed.
And it's the same as you talked about Odessa Permian, and they think that they're still the same team from Friday Night Lights, and even the Garland fan base. That's a program that's won 4 state championships, but the last was in 1999
for sure.
And you talk to the older guys, older people who have had like 3 or 4 generations that have gone through and graduated from Garland High, they expect it to still be the 60s. Plano still expects it to be the 70s and 80s, but everything has changed so dynamic. I mean, when you just talk about the population shifts and just everything.
Schools
the dominant powers today, some of them weren't even around back in Plano's heyday. So, I mean, I know this changes as far as over time, but I mean, I just thought Coach McCullough had just expectation level he walked into. He was expected to deliver state championships, and they didn't have necessarily. I don't know if it's a talent or what, but they don't have. It's not the same Plano team as it was. Back in the heyday.
It's almost like Plano is the Dallas Cowboys. All this past success, expectations are so high, and then over the last 20 years, at least 10 years, they just haven't.
1994 was the last time they won a state title.
That's the Dallas Cowboys right there to a T. Wow.
It's the one thing, like, no one's ever going to cut Plano ISD any slack, because at the end of the day, they still have the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th largest high schools in the state.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wrote as much at the end of the season. If you just look back at the past decade, it's been rough for Plano ISD. Plano East and Plano Senior did not win a playoff game this decade. Plano West, they just snapped a 33-game losing streak last season. I mean, so it's basically this was a message that was being sent as far as kind of getting the standard back up to where Plano ISD feels it should be at. Now, is this going to be a cure-all as far as just slotting in a new voice and a new sense of leadership for that program? I mean, who knows? Plano ISD is not like most districts. There are many more moving pieces within PISD than there is your typical school district, and those sorts of things can impact the way that an athletic program operates. But just when you look at their history and their success, I mean, in Plano football, they embody that. I mean, this is one of Texas high school football's legacy programs, and just these past months have been just basically one collective effort by Plano ISD to make it clear that they want to get back to that standard, and that's starting on the football field, where again they're held to as highest standard as any program in the state. That is obviously the big news that came down the pipe yesterday, just in the local high school football scene, as far as when Plano's looking to potentially have a replacement in. They're shooting for the springtime. Obviously, want to get someone in here before spring ball, just so those kids aren't having to, make these on the fly adaptations to a brand new scheme, brand new coach, and all that. With only so much time before summer gets here. So we'll see how that unfolds. But yes, big news coming down yesterday is Jaydon McCullough has been reassigned within PISD.
Do we have any idea what his new role or job is?
That is, we are still trying to track that down.
It's the $1 million question.
Yes, it is. But yes, that is right now kind of where things are at on that front. But yes, a changing of the guard within Plano ISD over the past few months. And that'll do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. Once again, a big thanks to Kelly's Craft Haven for having us out here. We'll be back here next Thursday for a bit more of a festive episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. So in the meantime, folks, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.